of 105, H105 version draft number 1.1, and we still wanted to hear from Willa and from the Attorney General's office. And I know there's some issues with the report that we'd like to look at and anything else we want to weigh in on. So if you could join us at the table, and thank you for your flexibility today.
Good afternoon, Willa Farrell, from the Attorney General's Office, Court Diversion and Pretrial Services. Thank you for the opportunity to come back.
Yeah, I got the wrong version. 1.2, right?
2.
'93. Thank you.
You want my copy? Oh,
No, I have it here somewhere. Here it is. All right, thank you. Sorry for the delay there.
I listened to the testimony this morning and I heard a couple of themes that came up, and if it works for the committee, I would just sort of run through what I thought. And they may be non-issues at this point, and I'm not sure, but so there was talk of drug impairment for youth. I don't think that we are equipped at this stage to be taking drug impairment while people are driving. I think we should, there was some reference to that. So I just think limiting it to alcohol at this point with the 0.02 is as much as I would recommend.
So looking longer term, are there things we can start thinking about? Obviously not before crossover this year,
Right.
To get ourselves prepared for that. And you don't have to have an answer right now because we have some time, but I'd love to revisit after crossover of what we need to start or off session, whatever. And start thinking, what do we need in that realm?
Okay.
Since it seems from what we heard today, there's an increasing amount of drug impairment.
I'd be happy to think and talk about that.
Thanks.
There was a discussion about the interlock device, and my observation from the fact that our programs also work with 800 people last year whose license is suspended, that many of whom, aren't coming to us underage but are coming through the criminal division as adults, that device is a really important tool for a lot of people. It's an option for those. And I think in this context, it's important to retain it as an option for those older youth who are working. And it provides a way for them to drive legally. And the reality is, I think people who don't respect the law may continue to drive under suspension and may not avail themselves of the point of an interlock device, but having the interlock device is a tool and resource for people to continue to drive legally and not drive under the influence. So I think that's an important aspect of existing law, and advocate for retaining. There's quite a bit of discussion about suspensions and the length of the time, picking up from yesterday's or previous days. I support the proposal in 1.2 for the time periods. I mentioned this the other day when I testified. I think what's important in the suspension periods, given that we don't know the effectiveness of length from what I and others have not been able to find current research that links the number of days to the effectiveness of deterrence or public safety, that what is where I go to is procedural justice. And what we do know from the research is that if a punishment is seen as fair and logical, people are more likely to follow that and respect it. And when there's an illogic that's apparent to people, they don't trust the system and are less likely to abide by their punishment. So I think having it a logical and incoherent with existing law in terms of the ratcheting up is important.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, Will, just on that point,
Yes.
your office and the Attorney General are comfortable with the 9145.
Yes. There was discussion this morning about failure and the whole process of suspension and notification. And under current law and within the just possession realm, and which is the basis for the .02 expansion. If somebody fails the youth substance awareness safety program, this is the only violation now. Diversion actually issues the ticket. We do not notify DMV of anything, and I don't think that's our role. What we do now with possession and what is envisioned in this bill is we would issue the ticket and then the individual would go through the Judicial Bureau process. The vast majority of the time, they are then going to be adjudicated. I've never known the term you use in the civil realm because you're not found guilty, but you're adjudicated. And so then the suspension process happens, and the Judiciary, the Judicial Bureau, electronically sends every night suspension notices to DMV, and then in the morning it's uploaded into the DMV system. That's my technical explanation. I think having a simple, clear, existing process to build upon is the way to go. I don't think our program should be somehow notifying DMV of license suspension. I think it should go through the process. Seemed like that was sort of being tossed around as an idea.
So you're fine with where we are with issuing
Yes.
notices of suspension now, the way is okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There was discussion about younger drivers in .02. And I actually asked Deputy Commissioner Russo earlier today for some data from DMV. And so what was amazing how quickly he got me this. So for last fiscal year, there were 54.02 suspensions issued for first time suspension. 11 of those were for 16 and 17-year-olds, and 43 of them were 18 and older.
Nothing below.
That's what he sent me. So I asked him for 16. I went back to look at my email and I asked about 16, 17. But I think if you're younger, I don't know if that's tracked or how they track it. So it is possible, I guess.
That something wasn't captured.
Yeah, I didn't ask for that, but I did ask for .02, like they have different codes, and this is what he sent me.
If I can, you're asking younger than 16?
Yeah.
So it would be with a permit. So they don't have a license at that time, and so you would have an adult with it, so.
Right, so yeah, that's right. It's not capturing suspensions because there's nothing to suspend. Yeah, so I guess.
That's probably why.
Yeah, so I just am curious, like if there is a number of those infractions captured
Right.
first.
Which would be the provisional license that's
Right.
can be
Provisional includes juniors operator and learner's permit.
The other thing and then he also sent subsequent, so a .02 that is like a second violation. And last year there were 2 of those suspensions, and both of those people were 19. So I just thought I'd share that in terms of context. And I wanted to just say, if somebody 15 were referred to us, that would be it's a huge red flag. And our programs are mandated reporters. And when DCF gives the mandated reporting training, and we repeat this in our manual, it's like, you don't have, it's a suspicion, you have a concern, you call DCF because DCF may be hearing from another person. And so together, maybe there's something. So we really, if that's, if we got somebody really young I think Lieutenant Avalon spoke to this really well this morning, that's very problematic and concerning. Then in terms of actual language change, I spoke briefly with Representative Goodwin this morning about the report information. So,
Did you speak to?
yes, your colleague.
Oh, good. Sorry, I heard good when I didn't know who that was.
I may be mangling a name.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
it's who I thought it was.
Yes. So my understanding is I think you want aggregate data. And the way I read this, it sounded like individual. And I also don't think that you want case numbers or docket numbers. So depending on what the committee wants, I wanted to get what I think would be helpful for us to provide, as you decide, would be just for the .02 violations. So under whatever that subsection D is, I believe, the number and age of the individuals referred to that provision, the number who complete the program successfully, and then of those who fail, whose case at the Judicial Bureau leads to a suspension.
So that last step.
And the number who fail, I mean, you could just go with the number of fail and say, okay, those people were suspended, but it is possible to go to the Judicial Bureau and have your ticket dismissed. I mean, it does happen. So I think what you want is the actual who got suspended after failure. And then I appreciate that the goal in this subdivision 5 on the last page about the duration, what, evidence of reduction in recidivism. And I will just say, I have some reservations about our ability to make that analysis. Like both the numbers, at least last year, were pretty small. And I am not, even, and my colleagues, I think, with all due respect to the judiciary and the other individuals I work with, I'm just not sure whether we have the analytical research skills to make conclusions about the effectiveness of suspensions. We could certainly give you our opinions, but I'm just telling you my opinion is we are not researchers.
Yeah, so we've heard from other witnesses, I mean, from the CRG, Crime Research Group, as far as the difficulties in doing recidivism studies.
Yes.
And it's not the kind of thing I understand that is like a annual kind of reporting issue. So I agree with that we can subsequently ask for recidivism study after we've learned, after this is going. And we may be changing the definition of recidivism in another bill that is being considered, which is also kind of interesting,
Right.
how that fits in. So that's absolutely information that I would want.
Yeah.
I agree that it's not the kind of thing that is, that's kind of like a separate study from what I understand.
I think so. The only other thought, and I sort of hesitate to offer this, but somebody could get a .02 and also be charged criminally. So I do think probably with all these players, one could do some name matching and report on that. So, X number of people referred to YSAS for .02, and then some subset of those people may also end up charged criminally. I don't know if that's a data point. I mean, just a thought, and I just don't know how often that happens.
Yeah, that just a point of information. If that's a direction the committee would want to go, we have to adjust the confidentiality provisions.
For the which
So like,
to match names.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's also kind of why, or how one would do a study.
right.
And that also goes into what we're dealing with the ceiling expungement bill as well, so that names are not being expunged. I don't know that that's what happened in this particular instance, but
And that data point I raised may be better as part of a recidivism study that looks sort of at people more broadly.
so I mean, there's not any data, or is there data like from the past couple years that we could look at and then compare to that data after this gets implemented? I guess these .02 tickets are not going to programming.
Right, I believe, I mean, because DMV was able to send me today the number of suspensions based on those violations, I would assume they could go back some number of years.
Are they able to say that these were 180-day suspensions and that's how long they served? What kind of level of detail was there?
Well, I think my understanding of how DMV works, if you were to be issued a ticket under, the current law, then you would be getting, I can't remember what the current law is, whatever that length of suspension is. Like
Yeah,
it's like if you're adjudicated for that violation, that is the length of the suspension that DMV imposes. So
but they don't, okay, all right. Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's comparative data that we could be looking at from where we are now versus in the future, but I guess there really isn't.
apples and oranges, maybe.
And I do want to figure out how to do some sort of recidivism study, but this is just not, I don't think, the place for it yet.
There is another S14 of 23. Recidivism, not necessarily on this, but of the criminal justice system writ large will be published again for years.
Are we? It'd be nice to maybe put it in something in here that we'd want a study in 3 years, but that's a little odd.
Well, the reason why that's the chosen timeline is because of the current definition of recidivism.
Right, but even with a different, so a study I would be to look at the people who have gotten through tickets the last 2-3 years and see what recidivism rate they have, and then in 3 years from now, looking and seeing if we've changed that rate at all. But that's, I think, beyond the scope of this. So, yeah, Karen.
It's what I was going to say. I think it's another example of, we only have so much for here. And I think part of this was to have a report back, to have us continue the conversation, because we were like, we're starting something brand new with doing this and wanting to have the data there. So I agree, we could work this to get the exact, but I think that the fact that we're going to get it back in a year, or whenever it was, will create a place for us to have the conversation again.
And this is the kind of thing that we can actually work to see what kind of requests we need to the crime research group. We may not need any kind of bill to actually ask for this kind of thing, or maybe they will ask us for that thing. So we should note that that's something that we should be asking. Well, we need to bring CRG in just generally to ask them about reporting a little bit more than what we've done. So, all right, finish that.
I have one other
Yeah, go ahead.
small suggestion, and as the way this is written, we would be reporting if this bill were to pass and we started getting tickets in July, we would be reporting to you in November on a few months of data. So I'm wondering whether it might make sense to have the annual report start in 2026.
So for the effective date, maybe have the effective date for, that makes sense. The effective date for I being June next, 2026, that we want our first report in 2026. However, you would have that effective date, I don't know. I mean, it could be
Annually on or before July 1st. Because if the bill doesn't go into effect until July 1st, then the next one would be the following year.
I may suggest keeping the November date because, or maybe it's August, but we don't get our data from programs, their data goes through June, and sometimes it takes just a while to clean it up.
Make I effective July 1st, 2026. Yeah, I would say. So I do want to just go back and just explore a little bit longer. I know that Karen actually has some gold moments. Is for this bill, I mean, how do we track how we're doing? Is this report good enough at this point for getting the data? I mean, then we can look further down the road, because that's one thing that, yeah, I think on this particular bill, we're doing something new. I'd like to understand how we're understanding whether it's making a difference, 3-4 years down the road.
So I mean, I don't, as you said, I'm not sure whether this is something we put into law, but right now, Crime Research Group, they get their annual grant from the federal government, and they have some, like, I think they call it discretionary money, and they're working with us right now on, trying to help us come up with better outcome measures. So it might be a conversation with Crime Research Group is like, could a study of this nature be one of the special projects that they do in 3 years or some time period? But I do think a group like Crime Research Group is, they have access to all the data, even confidential data.
So can we add just a provision with the reporting, requiring as part of the November 1st report that the Attorney General's office in consultation with Crime Research Group shall recommend outcome measures?
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to do that.
Can you repeat that again?
So I would like to add as part of the first report that the Attorney General's office in consultation with the Crime Research Group, and I don't know that we need to have a list of other entities because you guys can decide who you want to talk to. But at a minimum, you'll be consulting with the Crime Research Group to propose outcome measures for this program.
And
It's for this program. It's for this. I don't know if you'd say for this program or for this section or
Impaired driving.
for what we're doing here.
So that's just one question of clarification. So is this report just focusing on the impaired driving aspect of?
That's what I is. Isn't that what that is? That's a point.
Well, I said I think it's violations of the section, which would include procurement, possession, consumption.
I thought we were going to narrow it to, well, from what I was hearing, I thought we didn't get there, that we would be narrowing it to 0.02 violations and then having the number and age of referrals, completions, failures, and suspensions.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So it would be with respect to the 0.02 tickets that are having outcome measures. And we should be doing this with every bill. And I don't know that the bills we've done so far really lended themselves to that. I mean, the dead body bill and the DUI bill, I mean, I was looking at it and I didn't think that there was any particular measure on that one. But anyway. And we're doing a lot of reporting on H2. Yeah.
I just want to, I think it's actually a question for Ben. No. Just because of something you brought up, do we need to do anything around if you have a DUI charge with this as well around suspensions under the DUI? So you get suspended for one or the other.
No, you can get suspended for both, but there is the clause in there that says if you violate 1205 and other statutes in addition to comparable statutes in other jurisdictions that they run concurrently.
Okay, and I saw that that's sufficient to for any. Okay.
Yeah. Page, this is for them. Page 2, line 19, there's a reference of 30 days for the first offense. Should that be 90?
I don't have to get it from you.
No,
Possession.
that's the possession.
Oh, just possession.
Yeah.
Why isn't that one in sync with the other day amounts?
Because the request was for the impaired driving statutes.
if I may clarify, I think it's because it's different offenses, possession of it versus driving under the influence of it. And so it's a severity piece of it.
So anything else for Ben, I guess at this point, or for Willa, I guess, take law.
I have one more. Yeah, well, and this came up earlier, just curious to get
Yes.
the general's reaction to it. So page 2, line 18, page 3, line 1. the monetary component of this.
Yes,
So these haven't been updated since 2003.
yes.
Is there a view that the general has on if these should be increased?
I haven't spoken with Attorney General Clark about that. I would speak from my perspective is that I think $300 for most, still for most youth is a substantial amount. And I think it is that dollar figure and the suspension are the motive, often the motivators for people to engage in the program.
Mhm.
Most people, like, sort of varies, 75 to 80% of people complete the program successfully, and avoid paying that. So we do have a sliding fee scale. This is a program, frankly, where more people are able to pay our fee compared to the fine. So I do think these violations cut across a broader demographic, but I don't see a need to increase the dollar amount of the fine should somebody fail.
But you're not seeing failure to pay as a concern.
If you, you only receive the fine if you're adjudicated in the Judicial
Right.
Bureau. And at that point, you get the license suspension. If you don't pay your fine, there is no further license suspension. What the consequence is the state sends that to collections. And at some point, when you're 18 and got a job and you get a tax return or you win a lottery ticket, they take that money, the debt to the state. So it is, the concern of burden, debt burden is always a concern. I hadn't thought much about, lowering it. It is a motivator. And yes, I would,
That's the way
yeah,
motivation.
yeah.
Thank you.
Not fully thought out thoughts, but.
No, it's just helpful. Though.
Yeah.
I appreciate your thoughts.
So then you have enough to change the reporting requirement?
Yeah, so for point two violations, we're looking for aggregate data on the number and age of people referred, the number of successful cases, the number of failed cases, and how many had any suspensions imposed by the Judicial Bureau. The report beginning on July 1st of 26, and for the first report issued, the Attorney General and CRG and others as needed to propose outcome measures to evaluate .02 violations.
Anything else on this?
No, I don't.
Okay. So we'll get you back on the schedule for tomorrow morning to go over what that is. And then if people are ready to vote, we'll vote in the afternoon. Otherwise we'll put it off until after break, but so. I have some folks coming in at 1 till 2 for the bill we had right now, but I can schedule this for 1 if folks have to be leaving earlier.
Yeah, we can do it right at one.
Yeah, so I'll do that at 1 and then.
Told you that I have to.
Yeah, we'll do that right at 1 and then we'll have the additional testimony on 193 after that. And if you need to watch, you can always watch further, but so obviously, so. All right, we're adjourned until what day? Tomorrow, yeah, Friday, so it's